where we explore multidimensional topics in a practical 3D reality sort of way. I'm really excited to introduce you to my friend Merlin Bola. Say hi.
Hi. Hello, guys.
Where are you in the world?
I'm back in Germany after having been in Central America for 3-ish years. And yeah, in a major transition phase, I'm figuring out where to go from here.
Yeah, I love it. So Merlin's a fellow agency founder and friend. We met on LinkedIn. That's where I tend to find most of my friends these days. We've never met in person, but we've spent it feels like a couple years just kind of talking back and
Yeah.
forth over that platform and WhatsApp. And you truly have one of the most like brilliant, fascinating minds. And so I'm going to try to keep up with you honestly today in this conversation.
You're ahead in so many areas. So the admiration is mutual, I guess.
Yeah. So, okay, so you reached out to me about the idea of telepathy, and you were
Yeah.
having your brain was kind of in hyperdrive around that topic. And so I was like,
Yes.
let's just get on a podcast and let's explore it. There's a lot of people coming into my universe, curious about this topic, thinking about it, wanting to explore it, wanting to experience it. So yeah, anything's fair game around that conversation. But yeah, I'm curious, like, where would you like to start?
Actually, I'm curious how you ran into it because I don't know yet. I know you're onto this topic yourself, but I'm actually curious about your story, how you made the connection, and like telepathy seems to be a topic in your life for a while now. Um, and I'm actually curious because I had some experiences myself where I was sure that there's something like let's say extrasensory perception, picking up on people's thoughts, of course, moments of precognition actually, this kind of stuff. So I was thinking about it at times. I was never sure. Um, yeah, and I'm curious because I have a little glimpse of it, but I mean we have you've shared the podcast with me, that we shall not name, and yeah, I'm curious what the connection was for you.
Yeah, I guess I would say it's always been like a topic that I've been curious about. I generally my whole life has have been interested in metaphysical, spiritual things.
Yeah.
Um, there's a person that I'm going to interview soon. She's here in Nashville. Her name's Yvonne, and she had an experience a couple years ago where she started channeling, and the Akashic records. And so I
Mm.
had a session with her. I don't even know. It feels like a couple years ago at this point. And she had mentioned through that channel something to do with telepathy in me. And we can't find the footage. So we're both like, God dang it. I wish we could figure out where that was. It got lost in the ether. It's back in the Akashic records. But she had said something about, she had said something about how I was going to teach others how to do telepathy. And that honestly, that was like out of sight, out of mind, because when she said that, I wasn't experiencing telepathy myself, nor do I at this moment in time um, have the ability to teach other people how to do telepathy. Okay, so but that was like a seed that was planted. That was just like a really interesting thing that happened. And then over the past year, I started doing a lot of psychedelic therapy. And I had had an experience that I talked about on another episode, so I won't spend a ton of time talking about it. But I had an experience of telepathy while I was doing ketamine therapy, and it showed me that it's more than like empathy, you know, because I think
Hmm.
being empathetic or neurodivergent, there's a lot of energetic information we're picking up from the field. But it kind of showed me that there's still like a lot of projection at play, right? Like you make a very subtle shift in your face, and then I'm telling myself a story about it.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm really good at it, but it's still like not quite what telepathy is. What I experienced in that journey was just this like download of information, almost like I think of a digital folder that has like many files and
Yeah.
videos, and it's just like a channel. And so that was my first experience with it. And then I had an experience that I also share in another episode with my wife, where she was sitting across a table from me, and all of a sudden found herself like in my brain, in my body, getting another big download of information about what it was like to be me. So she experienced my brain, she experienced what my body felt like before ketamine and after ketamine. And so we had a couple of experiences like that over the past year that were really life changing, to say the least. And then, yeah, like I had the opportunity to really build a community by running an ad of people who are interested in talking about and exploring and experiencing telepathy. So that is the moment in time that you are finding me in. And I know
Yes.
for a fact there are a lot of people who have like been on this journey way longer than me, who have experienced it over and over and over again, and probably like are the ones who should be teaching it. And so I've kind of like shot out this beacon to the world and said like, hey, there's a group of people over here who are exploring consciousness. Who are you? What do you know? What are you experiencing? What kind of um, in person or even virtual experiences would you like to co create with us to be able to explore consciousness? And I think one of the things that I bring to the table is I have like a creative agency behind me, which means we have tools to like do production and make these little mini documentaries or do podcasts
Yeah.
and eventually work with brands. I think that's like a whole other territory I'm interested in, is like what happens when companies start becoming conscious and wake up, and so what kind of new
Yes.
support would they need in the world? So that's kind of very quickly my journey with how you've, yeah, found me at this moment in time. Any questions or thoughts around that?
I mean, it's so you're doing pioneering work. That's for sure. That's one of the things that shines so strongly in your work. I'm talking about like a sense of direction a lot, because that's when we can't entirely trust science and like reductionist conclusions, and but also like I'm personally like quite concerned with the um, there's something there in this realm. There's precognition, there's telepathy, there's these kinds of phenomena, and then there's also a lot of bullshit to disambiguate. And and for me personally, it really comes down to a sense of direction, that there's something there, that there's something to explore there. It seems to hinge on belief. That's the probably tricky part. Why skeptics then not always manage to reproduce findings that maybe more open-minded people have managed to produce. Um, so there's a sense that there's something there. It is relevant. It is paradigm shifting, and it is a little hard to communicate against a skeptic backdrop. Um, the one thing that I can tie it most to, I just started reading The Master and His Emissary by Ian McGilchrist. I'm not sure how his name is pronounced, and it seems to be such a kind of right hemispheric endeavor to quite a degree. Like language, for example, seems to sit in the um, left hemisphere, and language is the exact thing that spellers have trouble with. But then they seem to have this access capacity for different stream of information, and the another notion that McGilchrist drops is that the left hemisphere, while being more limited apparently in its ability to comprehend the world, more narrowly concerned, also has this tendency for overconfidence. It's way more quick to assume that it already got it while not having really gotten it. So these, I don't know, these are topics that I see popping up there specifically. That there's a mystery there. It is not easy to comprehend for the left-minded kind of paradigm or left brain paradigm, and yeah, but it's to be pursued nonetheless.
Yeah, yeah. You know, what's kind of coming up for me with that is part of my experience with experiencing telepathy in a psychedelic state. I don't know if you've heard this story or not. It's a little out there, but it's what happened. So I'm just being authentic and sharing it. What happened was I saw this praying mantis being in front of me, and it told my brain telepathically. I did not hear any words. It told my brain, "Shut up." And then it told my heart, it told me to connect with my heart. And what happened was there was this like light tunnel that connected my heart to it. And I just
Mhm.
received all this information like a channel. And my brain understood none of it. And so, I've been doing a lot of somatic work over the past year or so too. And so, a lot of my work to heal my nervous system and heal trauma and all of that has been centered around getting me out of my head, which I'm really good at being in my head. I'm neurodivergent, right? I
Same.
love exploring ideas. A lot of the work has been helping me wake up to the fact that there are different centers of intelligence in the body and to be able to be more sensitive to those, like being on the spectrum. When I'm very high functioning, I would label myself, if I wanted to do that, ADHD. And I would say that for
Mhm.
most of my life, I was not very attuned to my feelings. And one of the reasons I started therapy is I was like, I think I only feel three things, like anger, sadness, and joy. I don't know. And so, a lot of that has been I've been learning that, like, having being neurodivergent, having so much sensory input coming at me has completely overwhelmed my nervous system. And then, my brain's trying to, like, make sense of it all, and I'm disassociating and I'm not in my body. And so as I've done the work to get in my body and discover other centers of intelligence and value those and get more curious about those more than my brain, a lot of these more, metaphysical gifts, spiritual openness, all of that's just coming online naturally.
Yeah. Yeah, you said, I think you started this little talk with psychedelics, specifically their purpose in this whole endeavor, and I mean there is the claim or the essentially reductionist view that, all right, whatever you happen to experience on psychedelics probably is just then your mind being stimulated and certain neurotransmitters and you're making shit up, um, and I always had the sense, nope, they rather unlock something. They maybe attune you to a different frequency, maybe attune you to stuff that's there all along or has been there all along, just not as readily recognized. And then at some point, I kind of heard this confirmed by Terence McKenna, who also kind of just said this that the shamanic work that he was observing and doing himself, it can really fully fall flat if you're not attuned, if you're in a like mental space, and you kind of know it works, you know it exists, the knowledge of it is there, but the access point isn't like isn't there, and that's typically for him, psychedelics were the unlocker. They I think he phrased it. It works like a charm on psychedelics. It's just no question. Then it just works. It's undeniable to him, and I wonder. Uh, so you can go about it with substances, And then there seems to be a portion of the population that seems to have this knack for it. And what's striking about this, I felt like I'm thinking about the autistic kids, uh, and non-spellers or spellers, non-verbal, um, and they are talking about that belief in them makes this whole thing easier, unlocks their ability. And there was the sense coming up that that they really only are feeling stronger, are noticing, experiencing in a much more prominent and kind of forcing way that they can't do without. Um, what kind of applies to all of us, that they are like antenna for almost a universal law. That, for example, belief in something matters, and we kind of are talking about like psychological patterns, or it's the Rosenthal effect, I think it is. There's also another word for it. That if you, whatever you expect from someone, if you expect someone to fail, it is more likely that they're failing. And you could always boil this down to you're sending like subtle cues that you can pick up on through your five senses, but maybe there's more. Maybe there's this really this unlocking, as soon as you say, hey, yeah, I'm not introducing doubt into something, which I am too good at. Um, I
Yeah.
would
Well, I
have to sacrifice a part of myself probably.
mean, well, that's, and that's not a new idea for religion, like I have a Christian
Yeah.
background. And so like it's
Mhm.
very clear within that framework or that paradigm that if you want to experience something, you have to believe. And then there's the idea, I mean, you can explore it from so many lenses. We're looking at science, we're looking at religion. There's like I'm thinking of simulation theory, the idea that the frequency we're in and the projections that we make actually like a video game, our next step dictates our reality, that
Yes.
everything's a mirror. So it's all kind of pointing to a very similar idea in my head, which is if you want to experience telepathy, what kind of moves can you make to, really look at the narratives that you have in your head and maybe come up with a new one, explore a new one. What would it look like to open your mind? Some people can do that more naturally than others. That's why psychedelics can help. But I agree, like you don't need
Mhm.
a psychedelic to experience that. What things can you do in your life to raise your vibration? Because that was another thing that the kids said, right? It's like believe us, but also there needs to be like a high vibration around them, like to be in a state of love, a higher vibration than like all that
Mhm.
negativity makes it easier for connection to be possible. So we're talking about frequency now.
Yeah. Yeah. Where my mind certainly went was this big question. The world misunderstands them. So the world just sees not spell, not like nonverbal, can't be can't possibly be competent, therefore, and yeah, even down to the assumption that they couldn't possibly even learn how to spell, that there's nothing there, no one in there. And the striking thing really is that the podcast makes it sound like there's such a massive expanded reality for them to experience, probably really striking, rich inner world, um, information, just the translation to the outside world is hindered in some way. um, and yeah, there's this question, what happens exactly when this is unlocked. um, and I mean that the podcast already points to it,
Well,
that they
there's
seem to have, yeah,
clues. There's clues, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah,
there's
yeah,
there's spelling, there's touch, right? Touch is a part of it, which also kind of
Yeah,
corrupts the data. But like that makes a lot of sense to me, being neurodivergent.
yeah.
I have a really interesting relationship with that, like the grounding energy from someone else being able to change the way my energy flows. The other clues are, I don't know if you got to this point yet or not, but they basically they basically say that like the current medical system is failing them. They don't understand them. What they're offering is not helping. What they need is sound and energy healing to be right energy waves. They need us, more of us, to understand how that works and to be able to provide these therapies. And I think the more of that starts to happen, the more they're going to be able to be in their bodies to allow the energetic flow. And I don't like, I'm not an expert in that. It's so funny that we're talking about this right now because literally this morning I drove into Nashville and I met someone who has this, I forget what you call it, vibroacoustic table. And so
Hmm.
I laid on it and I had headphones and it was like journey music and the table vibrated along with the music and it was sending waves, sound waves at different hertz into my body. And I'm just laying there and I'm like, ah, I like get a nonverbal autistic kid on this table. Um,
Hmm.
where are the people who are already doing this and exploring this specifically with autism? And so I got to like tell her about all of this and so now she's on the journey exploring that. So anyway, yeah,
Yes.
there's a lot in motion, but I think like it's that world that's gonna, my prediction is it's that world that's gonna unlock it.
Yes. The Have a second. Are you talking that a certain technology applied or combined with their natural gifts uh, might might unlock? I didn't fully get the point.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
Potentially.
All right.
And there's all sorts of other modalities. There's different types of energy healers that I think will be able to understand. Like I think of Reiki, right? Like Reiki's working with
Mm-hmm.
energy. And that's just one modality. But there's a whole universe of people there who have spent the past 30 years or whatever, like being in people's energetic fields and learning how to ground
Yeah.
energy. And you mentioned shamanism earlier, right? Like there's a lot of ancient practices that we're just collectively coming online to that probably already have the answer. And I don't know. I'm like not of the opinion that I need to spend a lot of my energy making this make sense for the
Mm-hmm.
scientists or the people in the world who are materialist. Like I think that's important over time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think, the podcast does a really good job at probably trying to answer some of these things. But like some of these like skeptical things or like kind of make sense with like scientific proof. And so like I'm thankful for that. And I know you do a really good job at existing in that space. I think I'm maybe more on the other side of the spectrum where I'm like, I don't really care what they think. Like that slows
I would
me.
love to get there.
It's like,
I
yeah,
would love.
it feels
Yeah.
like it's just like dead weight and slowing things
Yeah.
down. And I'm just kind of like, where are the people who already are doing this? Like, I just want to be there and eventually things will
Yes.
catch up. I don't know. Like, I'm glad we're having this conversation though, because I know that is important to you. And I'd like to understand a little bit more about why or what that looks like and ultimately what that unlocks for the collective.
Yeah. Um, have a second. There are multiple things. The first thing that comes to mind is why I was originally concerned a lot, and it's less so now, but still, the like opinion of the skeptics and whether we can kind of all get on board with what might be a new paradigm. Um, and I'm still phrasing this very cautiously. Might be, and who knows then. Um, the first thing that comes to mind is quantum Darwinism. The reason for why I'm curious what the critical mass is. It's the idea, like if you've ever run into the assumption that we create our own reality, then of course the next question is, all right, but there's many of us. So what do we co-create exactly? Like, how does the negotiation of this collective reality look like? And it's been a while since I looked into it, but quantum Darwinism seems to like provide a possible answer that the quantum states from all the possibilities that are out there that could be that could collapse wave function into particle and become actualized reality. Of all of those, there's like a little vote going. You bring your vote, whatever you believe in, whatever you believe to be true, is your little vote into the big voting box. And as soon as enough people are open-minded towards a certain possibility being real, it might very well work out that the whole system shifts. And I don't know, I feel like these were more of the wilder thoughts and impossible to prove, but I had the sense before that that past ages and maybe future ages, very likely future ages, that it might experiencing certain phenomena, recession, this kind of stuff. I think this can almost become like commonplace for culture, and then the whole culture operates on a different level, and certain peak states are not so much of a peak, are not so rare, don't seem so far out there, because you don't have to rise so much from the bottom of the like collective level of consciousness. And back then, to go with the wilder thoughts, I actually was curious whether this could in some way be tied even to gravitation. Because we know there was giant growth in the past, and I'm not even sure whether that's just physical, or whether that has a consciousness kind of element to it in some way. But yeah, I'm noticing this is getting very speculative. There's a whole cosmos there that I might be fit to communicate another day. Not so on board today. Not
Yeah.
fully flowing.
Yeah. Well, and I share a desire of like the collective getting on board with this idea. And I see so many different ways that would change the way that we interact with each other on Earth. That would change everything. It would change the way that relationships function and business functions, and like I mean, it just completely dismantles all these like systems, like need for certain technologies. Like there's major implications for a collective agreeing that telepathy exists and take it further, experiencing it with each other, right?
Yeah.
I think maybe what I'm saying is I think the way that the tide rises is through individuals having their own undeniable and probably unproven experiences
Yes.
versus trying to convince some sort of scientific system that it's real, because even then it's still in the head. And I think telepathy, as I've experienced it, is a very embodied, like actual and like experience. Otherwise it's still a concept. So
Yes.
the more people that are experiencing and embodying this practice, the more that science will want to understand it, and then eventually it catches up. So, yeah, I think anyway, I think we're both looking at it in a similar outcome way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. A second. There was a thought that slipped me. Yeah, I wonder.
it's like extraterrestrials. It's like other like
Let's
fourth
go there. Yes.
it is like fourth dimensional beings or higher dimensional beings, right? It's like, okay, um, the idea of UFOs are now in the collective conscious. Like we're seeing it on
Mhm.
TV
Yes.
all of the time. We're, the you're not in the United States, but like our government is like talking about it. They're releasing papers about it, and but
Hmm.
still there's this sense, so it's in our awareness, but there's still this sense of like, when am I gonna see it physically? When it
Yeah.
like Jesus coming back? When is that like UFO saucer in the sky going to show up? And then I can point to it because it's material. And I can be like, there it is. Now I believe.
Yeah.
That's almost even like at this point in time, that's almost like impossible because like AI exists now and I don't even know what's real. If that were to like actually
Yes.
physically happen and
Yes.
be broadcast to me, I don't know that I'd
Yes.
be able to believe it, okay? And so like that's an interesting phenomenon, but like there are all of these people like the channeler I mentioned earlier who are having
Hmm.
experiences where they are actually in communication um, with like higher dimensional beings. And so, in a sense, it is being revealed, it is being experienced on an individual level, and the collective is beginning to get curious and talk about it and whatever. But like, I just think that the way that all these shifts happen are fundamentally going to be different than how we believed and experienced things in the past. And
Yeah.
and I think there's still this like collective, I don't know, perception of like, oh, okay, we're just like waiting for the ETs to reveal themselves to us. And
Hmm.
it's like, or our perception and our ability to like tap into higher frequencies, other, multi-dimensional experiences of ourselves and our own energy, like my point of view at this moment in time is actually what if I'm just starting to be able to see what's always been around me versus waiting for something to come.
Yeah.
It
Yes.
feels very similar to what we see
There's.
in Aliens.
I mean, these. Do you say cosmoses or is it cosmi? Um, these different realms are probably connected. I mean, again, I've had a phase with Terence McKenna, who I consider to be quite lucid on this stuff. And he for the first time, that was my first encounter with the notion that what we consider to be ET encounters, they don't necessarily have to be physical. That this might very much explain certain experiences that don't leave physical proof of anything. Um, and on the ET idea or phenomenon, um, there was a, I don't know, sometime last year I think, a funny thought. I had like a certain breakthrough and a certain fixation with these topics in 2013 to 15, and I thought like I probably overshot the mark a little bit. I was hyper fixated on this stuff and super fascinated, but also it was a little bit heavy. Looked into dark stuff, and back then already like aliens were a topic. I mean, we seem to have sightings for decades, and then in 2021, I think it was May, was the first kind of official report, like Pentagon confirmation. I'm not sure if it's the first, but the first one that reached me that was significantly like mainstream media um, attached. And I thought back to a certain, yeah, to certain scenarios. First, of course, the possibility that we have contact and had contact for a while, and that there's something there. But then also the possibility that you might uh, fundamentally, to jump ahead to the conclusion, that you might stage such an event for certain purposes. Um, and the thought that kind of grew hilarious to me was, if you now in this realm where we are right now, 2025, the world has when I thought I was maybe a bit crazy back then, the world has caught up. It's has gotten more crazy, and I feel more invited to talk about this stuff. Um, if you were if you were like seeing in mainstream media, alien invasion, something like this, it would probably now be the people who are critically minded who would say, "Hey, is that real?" And those who you would consider like maybe, I don't know, mainstream acolytes, they might say, "Hey, we've been conditioned now to believe it after rebranding from UFO to UAP, to probably maybe if that's the case, to shed the aura of the UFO as being like this nut job conspiracy kind of uh, topic, and yeah, just the tables have turned. It would be the other side maybe now that would assume it's not real. We're being fooled, and and I think it's a really interesting space between this, let's say, strategic application, this chance that we might, especially with AI, especially with advanced military technology, um, might see something that's not real, but at the same time there probably are other beings out there, intelligent, advanced, who knows, maybe even observing us with interest and maybe a little bit of disappointment. Who knows?
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I think we're living in a really interesting really interesting time. I used to be hyper fixated on the future. If you want to look at
Mhm.
time as linear, having a past, present, and future. I used to yeah, and just be really good at looking ahead, visualizing a preferred future, and then just seeing myself in that place. It's how I've built all my businesses. It's how I, you know, am living in this place right now. Just like that, I was really good at that. I didn't really look at the past a ton, and I wasn't very present until the past year. And in kind of unpacking why I'm always looking at the future, a lot of like nervous system work came up for me, and I mentioned that
Yeah.
earlier. But like there's something there with the nervous system. Autistic kids who are nonverbal are experiencing a flood of information in their nervous system. The nervous system, like we know scientifically now, like it actually like goes outside of us. It's not just like this tree of information throughout our body. It's like something happens when you and I are 3 feet from each other, right? And this is where human design really starts
Yeah.
to paint a picture as to what's happening energetically in ourselves and with each other. But it's like um, our nervous systems are then connecting and communicating 3 feet from each other, and then even over then it's like, wait, and that's happening over a screen because energy's everywhere, right? So there's just like so much to understand in this world. But I think, yeah, I'm like on a whole I'm trying to find the people who are exploring the edges of what we know about the nervous system right now.
Mhm.
um because I think a lot of the conversation in the collective is still very like humans are still stuck in fight or flight. And so this is how you regulate your nervous system. So you're not like so overwhelmed. And a healthy nervous system doesn't get stuck. It actually moves back and forth. A healthy nervous system isn't always calm. It's the ability to like get really pissed real quick and then be okay.
Yeah.
So it's like that's where I find most of the conversation around the nervous system is right now. Um, but I think when we begin to really understand how it works as a receiver of energy in general in other fields in between each other, that's going to reveal a lot of, I think, of how telepathy is actually occurring.
Mhm.
Is that something that you've explored a
Mhm.
lot? or at all in the nervous system?
Mm, I don't think as much. I mean, it truly is relevant for me. I guess I recently had a few conversations with someone about essentially growing up in East Germany, where and I'm still noticing. Frankly, really, to be completely transparent, I'm noticing today um, a little of a mellow kind of energy within me, not too much flow today, um, and it's in in these moments where I notice a certain like growing up in specifically in the east of Germany. Um, I feel like I don't know how, I don't know what the mechanism is, but I think that the term is flattened effect. To not have this full on range of motion essentially of your nervous system, to have a little bit more of a like it's not all just bursting out of you, bubbling up freely. It's not, the energy is not entirely free to move. And I personally can kind of, in a way, connect this to where I grew up. It was kind of the subtone that was present all the time. There were very few people um, who who were like this, like very free. And only at some point I got to know my aunt, who left the east of Germany at this time, like not at this time, way before we got to know her quite late, and she grew up in another like in the west of Germany, and she had a completely different personality, and that was my first touch point with someone within the family who just expressed herself very in a very alive way, in a very bubbly, resonant, very socially flow statey kind of way. Um, so in this sense, it is quite relevant for me. I feel it's certainly a topic of interest. I think there's more to see there. I think it's something that, yeah, I probably want to look into when the time is right. Some more. Already did, I feel, but yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder when you're asking this question, what exactly have you been thinking? Like, I know you've been doing ketamine therapy, and uh, what are other modes of working with the nervous system that you've like experienced as resonant,
Yeah,
effective?
I've been pairing, I've been doing ketamine therapy and I've been doing somatic experiencing. And so,
Mhm.
and in doing them together, it's really, if you've ever done a psychedelic journey, it becomes very apparent why somatic work is really important to be paired with it because um, you're having different experiences in your body that can like induce anxiety. I think of psilocybin mushrooms.
Yeah.
Um, those are really hard for me. It feels like every single like sensory input just gets turned on and is blasted wide open. And so, and I'm already a sensitive creature, right? Like I don't like bright lights and smells and right, very common within the neurodivergent community, being extra sensitive to
Yeah.
that. So like mushrooms for me, for instance, just like amplify my ability to take in information and it becomes so overwhelming. And but what it also does is it turns off the ego, like ego death for a while. So then all of the stories I believe about the world or myself, all of the walls that I've erected to keep myself safe, all of those just kind of like, dissipate as you experience with most psychedelics. And so that, oh, it creates an open channel where like,
Mhm.
new ideas and new experiences are welcome. So for me, it's been, trying to find that sweet spot of like what kind of psychedelic for what kind of experience that I'm exploring or what kind of like progress I'm hoping to make. Ketamine in particular, though, because it's a dissociative, what I loved about it is like it got me out of my body for a moment in time where I could just be in this pure state of consciousness. Um, it's very similar to me, like how I'd imagine like dying and just being like a soul in the ether, right? Like it feels very much like that for a while, and then you don't really feel your body. And so I, I I was aware as a neurodivergent individual that I was really held back in life by my body. My body is heavy moving through the world. It is keeping me distracted, keeping me frustrated by things, like when we develop a personality type to kind of like combat those things. But when I wasn't feeling my body for a moment in time, I could just be pure consciousness, which is a really interesting experience. And then as I start to come back into my body, then that's where the somatic practice really I find to be super helpful, which is like helping me um, allow the sensations in my body. It could be tingling, it could be an emotion that kind of feels like a wave. And so
Hmm.
going here and back and here and back and having the tools now to like be okay in my body has helped regulate it. Now I have more access to the things that I was unconsciously running from, a strong sensation, a strong
Hmm.
emotion. So, and I don't know what it's like to be like nonverbal and have such an extremely disassociated feeling experience of the body. But as we were talking earlier, that ability to be up here and also be in this is like super important for the progress of understanding how telepathy works, because these are the individuals largely who are accessing the Akashic records or the hill, whatever you want to call it, kind of
Yeah.
at all points in time. And I've have you come across Yeshuani? She's a creator on TikTok and
I feel
Instagram,
like
YouTube.
I've probably heard the name before. Rings
Yeah,
a bell,
yeah,
depending on
she's
how it's
she's
written.
interesting. I
Yeah.
haven't met her personally yet. I'd really like to. I was talking to another conscious creator. His handle's Mr. Cult Daddy. I don't know if you follow him either. Um, but yeah, I've been talking to to him, and he was telling me that Yeshuani was actually born nonverbal autistic, but she's verbal now.
Hmm.
And so then I started deep diving her content, and she does an amazing job at teaching, yeah, what it's like to experience autism, what it's like to experience the hill and a consistent flow of information. And there are people like her that I think will be really helpful teachers for us in the future, because she's now existing in a place where she's very integrated. She's everywhere, where I'm
Hmm.
still kind of clunky. I'm like, up. I'm in 3D right now. Oh, nope, now I'm here. And, so like part of the practice has been like just expanding my nervous system's capacity to
Hmm.
hold it all so I don't feel so fragmented. Does that make sense?
Hmm. I think yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
There's one question on my mind actually, in term regarding autism, and the latest kind of touch points that I had with people who are like I wondered whether I'm somewhere on this, like I'm certainly hitting resonance with some descriptions. I don't think it would be like it's a spectrum. I don't think I would be far on the spectrum, but there was the question on my mind before. I've been diagnosed with ADHD, but never autism. And the latest touch points with people who like have an explicit diagnosis were were going more in this direction that you've been talking about, like this perceptive, um, probably very active, like right hemispheric kind of paradigm, personal paradigm, and often a good, really good sense of direction, like a certain concern for what is the whole doing, not just me. Um, and then I ran into this like around the same time when I had these thoughts, when I had a few encounters where this pattern recognition kicked in. Um, then I read in The Master and His Emissary that McGilchrist like associated autism more with like this left hemispheric um, kind of paradigm, and he specifically tied it to like the alienated type of tech founder. I was thinking of Zuckerberg specifically. Um, And I wonder, have we understood autism at all? Is it both of these things? Are there different forms and we kind of just lumped them together? Or I couldn't make sense of it because they seem to be, these appear to be completely opposites
So
in their signature.
when you say both of these things, what are the two things you're
Yeah,
considering?
the one is like the more right hemispheric perceptive, seeing the whole kind of thing, and the other signature would be a more narrow, mechanistic, materialistic,
Yeah.
um, maybe detail obsessed, not seeing the whole, not like being, yeah, I feel like alienated is maybe a good word there.
Yeah.
And he considered it to be like the sickness of our civilization to some degree. And I just noticed that wasn't the image that I lately won
Hmm.
from autism.
Yeah, that's
You know?
interesting. Yeah, I mean, because some people might look at that right left hemisphere and say, well, right is more the ADHD side because it's big picture, it's really
Mhm,
creative,
mhm,
pattern recognition, and left is that like yeah, more detail, structure oriented. And so there may be something. I mean, like I said, I identify as ADHD, and I've found myself to
mhm,
be very unique in the world in the sense that I can see way big. I'm highly creative. I was a creative director. I own a creative agency. I could see really big picture, really far out, rapid pattern connection, but also the like autism side. There's like a really strong connection between the two because then I could very quickly be like, okay, that one, that thing, that idea, and then focus. Okay, how do I create a plan to get it done and actually like close a loop where I find a lot of ADHD people are just like never close, just endlessly opening loops and never closing them.
mhm,
And so like I
mhm,
think there could be something interesting in the brain for the ADHD identified person to be able to have more ability to flow back and forth.
mhm,
There might be something there. But like, yeah, when I think of like, quote, severely autistic people, you're right, they tend to hyper fixate and specialize in something. It could be trains, it could be sports, it could be, science, it could be, yeah, it could be anything. And they also historically have made the biggest advancements
yeah,
for us in all industries. A lot of them too, like claim though to have experienced some sort of channel. So like,
mhm,
I don't want to say that all people who are autistic who have made huge advancements for humanity have that spiritual side cut off. Like a lot of them actually are really like they would say that they're like channeling something from the ether. They get like downloads of like here's blueprints, like here's the answer to that scientific question. It's like pages and pages, right? It's a channel that is happening. um I kind of, I don't know, I think I just kind of see it as awareness. When you're unconscious, it's really easy to look at a lot of things or look at one thing and just kind of get stuck. The more you become aware, the more aware you are that you're the observer of things, and so you can, like at least how I'm experiencing consciousness, I'm like, oh, okay, like I am hyper fixated on this right now. What happens if I move my attention over here? Great, now I'm looking at this thing, and therefore my reality is changing. The chemical reactions in my body have now shifted because I'm looking at something else. So it's I don't know. There's something there with the ability to like consciously become the observer and go big, go small, that I think is maybe allowing more, I don't know, experience of what this all is, perhaps.
mhm. Yeah, yeah. I yeah. There's still this. It's still a puzzle in my mind that there seems to be like, of course I can, like the paradox that might be there. Um, that's fine. That's of course that's present. Um, but there was this almost irritation that someone who has studied the brain extensively, who has been a psychotherapist, I believe, then comes to like a rather harsh conclusion. In contrast to, for example, if I remember correctly, one of the leading autism researchers, who I think has once said that he considers autism to be like an evolutionary answer. It's like an idea whose time has come. It's a certain response to our predicament, to the current stage of evolution. And I had I didn't really hadn't meddled with autism, or was educated on it, or was highly interested in it at the time. I just thought, sounds sensible. Um, at least the question is interesting, because instead of making it like just a pathology and just uh, like essentially devaluing people, as I'm learning now that this seems to be happening, specifically to spellers, um, at least the question is a really good one, whether there's something very constructive there, not just not dysfunctional, but access potential. Exactly where we didn't look before, where we wouldn't have guessed, maybe, um, and yeah, maybe where where hard-nosed reductionists would even stubbornly, um, almost demand
Yeah.
there. There seems to be something, yeah, some ego part in there.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's so many different ways to look at it and understand it, and really ultimately try attempt to answer the question why. um,
Yeah.
and predict the future with it. So there's a lot of
Mhm.
different ways people are approaching it, and like it makes sense to me that autism would be a response to an environment and a system that like isn't good or healthy for the body. We have too much information coming at us. Our
Mhm.
food's doused in chemicals, so if you want to explore it from that lens, like that makes sense to me that the body would evolve to be like enough, and like start to like be quote unquote dysfunctional. I could see that side. That makes sense. There's I don't know how much you've gotten into like human design and gene keys and stuff like that, but
A little bit.
there's yeah, are you familiar with the idea of the raves? The
The
children
raves?
born in 2027 and beyond?
No.
Yeah,
Interesting.
look into that. There's a whole prediction there about something like changes in the human body genetically
Mhm.
around that time, to where in the way that they describe these kids, like this next generation of kids sounds extremely autistic. Um, and but there's like a yeah, there's a whole narrative there and prediction there around why that is happening and the role that they're going to play in the evolutionary advance of humanity and
Mhm.
the human body itself. Yeah, so yeah, I mean, so there's so many different like lenses we can look at autism through, and I don't know that I really like hardly harshly disagree with any of them. Like I'm like, oh yeah, I could see it that way. Oh, I could see it that way. And I'm kind of less in a place currently where I'm trying to understand it or categorize it. And I'm this is me personally right now. Like I'm
Yeah.
like, what's it like to experience it? There have been moments where I'm on ketamine. Like now that I'm aware that I have it, and I can understand like, oh, this is neurodivergent, this is neurotypical. I'm less in the categorization in the mind, and I'm like, okay, what's it like
Mhm.
to be my body right now? How do I work with the energy that's happening in my body right now? And it feels so basic, like in like I don't know, like kindergarteny sometimes, because I'm like if I'm honest, there are moments where I'm like, oh yeah, wait, I'm really mad because I'm really uncomfortable, and I can actually change my external environment. I can turn the temperature up 2 degrees, and wow, what that unlocks for me.
Mhm.
Whoa, that's wild. Um, or like, Nicole, you can't always control the external environment. Sometimes you can. Um, So what can you do for yourself on the inside when you can't? That's where somatic experiencing becomes really like interesting to
Yes.
me. So it's like that's how I'm kind of like exploring embodying autism. I've had moments on ketamine where um, a psychedelic experience is so ineffable, language fails to report what the experience is, right? So all I can say is I have had experiences on ketamine where I'm like, this is autism, and I'm experiencing it and I'm seeing the evolution of it, and then I come back into this human body and the ego comes back and the brain's trying to make sense of it with words and I can't tell you. But I can
Yeah.
tell you that I'm experiencing autism in a really out there bizarre, like far out on the edge way with psychedelics, and I don't know how to articulate it yet. It's
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, I had this experience before. There's a word on not generally psychedelics actually. There was a specific word for me on LSD um, that describes the state of being like venturing these worlds and a little overwhelmed with matter. You know, you have a backpack, there are only a few things in there. It should be simple, but it's not. You're just walking your backpack and you're not finding whatever else is in there. And there's a specific word popping up almost every time that perfectly describes the state, that perfectly captures the energy. And it's only returning on LSD. It's never there. It's never there in reach as a word when I'm in the normal everyday state of consciousness. And it's just this little pocket of the mind that is only unlocked when in this realm.
That's amazing.
So I feel it's yeah, it's
Do you
somewhat
feel
like
like
this maybe.
do you feel like it's even a real word? Or is it an
I'm
idea?
not I'm not sure. It
Okay.
very much feels like a word that should be able to be pronounced when it's coming up.
Yeah.
It has a certain vibe. It has a certain signature. It's crunchy in a way. I don't know. There's a signature there. But yeah, the word itself is never persists.
Yep.
Never.
Well, okay, so then there's like I don't have a ton of time to
Yeah.
unlock this, but there's the conversation of light language. If you've come up light
No.
language, and I
No.
even think back to like my my season of life in a Pentecostal charismatic church environment, and which was very like speaking in tongues was a very common experience. And there's something interesting. I don't want to say that they're the same thing necessarily, but the way that I perceive both of them is that they just kind of are like this they allow you to channel, like get your mind in some sort of different brain wave state so it's not trying to figure things out and organize and predict and understand. It kind of like calms the mind so that flow, this experience of flow and channeling can happen. Um, so yeah, there's a lot of different practices that can unlock that state of flow, meditation, breath work, psychedelics, probably sound healing. You know, the sky's the limit. So I would say for anyone who's interested in exploring telepathy, there may be work with your nervous system that needs to be done. There's a level of like openness and raising your frequency and vibration. Like we're kind of hitting on what ingredients seem to occur when telepathy is happening. But I think there's probably a lot of different ways for people to get there. And I'm very curious for anyone who's listening to hear how you're finding yourself in that state and what your experiences have been with it. Um, yeah, there's so much to learn from each other.
Yes.
So let me ask you, like, okay, you're thinking a lot about telepathy. Are you are you exploring
Lately.
this because you want to experience it?
Kinda. Yeah. I mean, I think we share a view there that there's a specific state of internal attunement that makes telepathy and other phenomena more likely. And the striking thing is actually that it seems to be as soon as this channel at least has been open in the past, people often develop a similar sense for it, like an intuitive sense for how this stuff works. And for example, specifically with the tapes, I was struck by how many little phrases that I either read in the past or that came to me showed up there, like very familiar takes, and they seem to be broadly shared by people who kind of access this realm. Um, and yeah, in this sense, what I'm noticing is I feel like I had like a better antenna for this stuff before, and it kind of got lost for myself in the last year a little bit. I don't feel as attuned right now. And there's certainly the curiosity around what, how can I help come back? What can I change in order for the state to be more of a like consolidated commonplace
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
state, you know?
Yeah, and for the record, you know, I know we've been talking a lot about your smart brain and stuff, and maybe some ways it might get in the way, but I've always perceived you to be such an open person. You know, like you're not unfamiliar with psychedelics or meditation or anything like that. I think it's just kind of exploring the universe of it all, you know, and I
Hmm.
love that you're in a place where you're like, hey, yeah, I'm feeling a little dim to this,
That's
and
a good word. Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's not like it's lost. It's just like your awareness, your attention's been in other places and you're like, okay, how do I get it back? You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Um yeah. Keep exploring. Let us know what happens for
I do.
you. I'm a big follow the energy person, right? So we're having this conversation. I'm like, you know, if you're already looking at this, then I'm like, great, you're visualizing your future and where you're heading, and your new reality is going to like open up and you're going to be there. So I can't wait for you to come back and be like, this is what I experienced and here's how I got there, right? Like that feels inevitable to me if
Yeah.
you want it.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, this yeah. I guess there's a little recalibration phase necessary, I guess. And I just noticed like the past year, yeah, I often phrase it like was a bit demoralizing actually. Also, just looking into the world and what was still possible, not just good news, what was possible on the like geostrategic front, and I guess I think part of me can really accept this as there's a phase that needs to be integrated, and then go ahead
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The world is really dark right now when you look at that shadow. And I
Yeah.
know, yeah, we've talked a lot about that. So, I think integrating it is the right word. That's the right idea. Is there
Yes.
anything else? I've got about 5 minutes left. Is there anything else that you want to say or explore? You wrote something down earlier. Does
There
that come
was, yeah,
up?
yeah, I'm looking there, but it's a little bit, it's probably more of a broader notion. I wonder, let's maybe just dip a toe in there and
Yeah.
yeah. Uh, so it's kind of it's a thought that came specifically to when encountering or when trying to digest the skepticism that is being brought not just towards telepathy but spellers, the spelling um, thing that even this is being so called into question, and can these kids even have their own thoughts, and is this genuine, or is this just like desperate mothers making something up and for their child to be perceived in some way intelligent. Um, and it kind of connects to an older thought that like I was puzzled which degree of resistance I was sometimes facing for certain considerations, for certain thoughts, critical thinking kind of type, um, that seemed very unsurprising to me. Um, like certain, essentially the notion, like to put it in a nutshell, the notion of would you be really surprised if someone, um, and maybe we should end on a lighter note, but if someone who killed war would before would give themselves the allowance to lie before. Like if the war starts with a war crime lie, and then people are sometimes incapable of considering that this could have been the case. So along similar lines, where I thought, all right, this doesn't seem to be a conscious kind of resistance. It doesn't seem to be, no, I won't consider this because I have made up my mind to not do so. But I think at times it's just the subconscious recognition that if you would open up to this possibility, then that kind of would mean existential crisis and you're not ready to have it. So there's a subconscious resistance. And in the same way, when I was puzzled by this resistance to spellers being more intelligent than they appear maybe on the surface to someone who values language. And I wrote it down like this, and I'll read it because it would probably be hard to reproduce. I wondered whether secular society in this moment, like represented by reductionist science, by a certain understanding of people, intelligence, autism, where the secular society is a system carrier of a collective trauma from oppressive institutionalized spirituality. That we might have had our wounds with the church and with spiritual overreach and spirituality that ultimately wasn't spirituality, that didn't really fit the principles, and that we might still have a trauma with this on some level, and that this resistance, this almost demanding that certain realities aren't true, might be subconscious and collective. And then Jung would need to be true, the collective subconscious. And that was the notion. So that might open up a whole different topic. I wonder, in the time that we still have left, what your thoughts around
That
this
really
would be.
resonates with me. I think you're absolutely onto something. I would love to explore that further. You said you're writing something on that, or you wrote something on it, exploring that idea.
So should I, like, I started writing an article on telepathy and the tapes, and should I still publish this? Because in the end, I noticed whatever I wrote was kind of already addressed in the telepathy tapes, which is really good work. Um, so yeah, should there? I think I'll write on this.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean, I specifically mean that collective shadow, that collective trauma. I think
I see.
that's a really
Yeah,
interesting area to explore.
yeah.
I know, being someone who came out of full-time ministry, being really involved in the Christian church, the idea, like the phrase shadow, the phrase integration, even trauma, like those aren't really part of the language. Maybe more so now. I don't know. I've been out of it for a while, but like, um, and it's ironic because this is my perception and my experience, right? I don't want to project this onto everybody, but like my experience of being in religion, organized religion, was that that's where, like, that's where I was taught to suppress everything. Like, I had such a big shadow, and I was
Mm,
so unaware of it because I didn't even have the concept of shadow, right? Like,
mhm,
I was existing as a person just trying to um, be in alignment with a certain belief system. And if there was anything that I was believing or experiencing that wasn't in line with this, I just stuffed it. And
mhm,
so, yes, I mean, we've spent the last 2,000 years more. I mean, age of Pisces, right? Like we've spent this um, large amount of time in systems like religion and like, governments as we see them today, and corporations and stuff that like taught us how to suppress and not be
yeah,
authentic, and um, and not having any sort of concept of shadow work or what that looks like, and certainly not any safety in doing it. the idea of, I mean, to past version of me, the idea that I would take a psychedelic was like already I'm like, well, there I go. I'm not a Christian anymore. Right. And like what,
Oh,
right? Like,
interesting.
yeah. The idea of being honest and saying, hey, I'm gay, right? That's like, oh, not a Christian anymore. And what's the implication of not being a Christian? It means I'm
Interesting.
going to hell. And it's very dualistic. Yeah. So it's like I had no
Yeah.
idea that there was a even like a practice or a concept of shadow work. And so I
Mhm.
think that that's just my background with it. But I would say like for someone with your brain and your level of curiosity to dive into what a collective shadow is and what that process even looks like of dealing with trauma as a collective so that, all of these
Mhm.
things that we're talking about, healing, experience, connection with one another, unity consciousness, all of those things are possible, I would say would be really important territory to explore.
Hmm. I take that to heart. Um, yeah,
I'd
I think
love to.
it's a
Yeah.
crucial topic to explore. Yeah, because it's so easy to overlook. It's a collective, like a collective shadow, a collective. If we all agree that we all better suppress something and not admit to something, then it's easier in numbers. So it's yeah, it seems
Yeah.
highly relevant. Yeah.
Yeah, explore it. I'll post on the Patreon. We'll talk about it again. Whatever. Like I'll help amplify it because like I started this conversation. I'm like I'm very much in a place of it's the individual journey. Like the only way that I can help the collective is right now to do my own work, my own shadow work and
Mhm.
have my own experiences and believe that because I'm part of everything, my serial network, that experience gets blasted out and changes something. And I still believe
Yes.
that. But like for you to explore the other side, the collective and what that looks like, I'd be really, really interested to see what you come up with.
Yeah. Thank you
Yeah.
for the tailwind.
Maybe there's even like a container that we can create where we do collective shadow work. What would that look like?
Mhm.
Do you know?
It's probably I can only assume there are people like probably systemic coaches and stuff that are already doing this. I would assume. I can only guess that there's probably something out there already.
Yeah, well, go find it.
Um,
Report back.
and
I'm
yes,
curious. Yeah, amazing. Oh, thanks so much for your time.
sweet.
This was really fun. This was really fun.
Yes,
I love
yes. Thank you for
your
the
brain.
invitation.
I think so many more people will be blessed to have come across it.
Thank you.
Hashtag blessed. All right, Merlin. All right, we'll talk soon.
Sweet. Yes, we do. Bye
Bye.
bye.